Today seems like a good day to prepare for the IELTS speaking test. I mean, really, how hard could it be? There are just 3 parts, and in each of these parts, there are just infinite possibilities of different questions. Questions about me, my life, my choices, questions about society, different choices that the government can make, laws, architecture, holidays. How do you prepare for the IELTS speaking test? Wait. Don't worry and don't spiral. It's actually possible to prepare for the IELTS speaking test. You just need to be smart about it. If you think you can go through every question ever asked in the IELTS speaking test, prepare an answer for it, and that's the best way to go about this, then you are wrong. That's a huge waste of your time. Yes, there are many different kinds of questions that can be asked in the IELTS speaking test. There is no way you can be prepared for all of them, but there are smart ways in which you can actually understand how to prepare for the IELTS speaking test, which is what I'm going to tell you today in today's video. I'm Asmita, your IELTS mentor here at Vedantu. If you're new to this channel, welcome to the game that we call Fake or Real. All you need to do is look at the list of questions and tell me if these questions are fake IELTS questions or real IELTS questions. Alright, here we go, starting with part 1 of the IELTS speaking test, which is the general introduction part. There are 4 questions on your screen. I need you to pause and quickly tell me which of these are real and which of these are fake. This is your cue to pause. And let me tell you, do you often go to the cinema? Is this something that can be asked in the IELTS? Well, the answer is absolutely, and it has been asked in the past. It's just a normal, simple question asking you about a routine, everyday thing that most people do. Very simply worded, is just like asking you if that's something that you enjoy doing. Replace cinema with any everyday activity that people tend to do, and you have a possible IELTS part 1 question. Pay attention to the way it's framed. It starts with do you. It has the word often, which gives us possibilities for multiple answers, like I go to the cinema all the time. I don't usually go to the cinema, very rare. I avoid watching movies altogether. So many different possibilities. Alright, so makes answering easier, makes a question applicable to a wide range of people. I'm sure there's nobody who doesn't know what cinema is. And so a very generic, very easy breezy part 1 question. Number 2, how do you think Hollywood is impacting cultural values? Ooh, this is a fake question for part 1 of the test. Is this a question that can be asked in, let's say, part 3 of the test? Absolutely. Part 3 has difficult questions that require critical thinking and analysis. But even then, the mention of Hollywood makes the question too specific. Now, the IELTS is for the entire world. Anybody in the world can take the IELTS test. So you cannot make it so specific to one film industry belonging to one country. This question in part 3 could sound like, how do you think movies impact cultural values? Or how do you think cinema impacts cultural values? All right. Coming to the third one, what kind of shoes do you like to wear? Can someone really ask this in the IELTS? I mean, do they even care about the shoes? The answer is yes. This is a real IELTS question. What kind of shoes do you like to wear? Sneakers, chappals, don't say chappals, okay, slippers, sandals, heels, whatever's your jam. I'm sure you wear some kind of footwear, right? So this is also a very generic question that everybody should be able to answer. You can also say, I don't have a preference. It depends on the occasion. If I need comfy footwear, I tend to go for sneakers. If it's a formal event, maybe heels that are ½ inch high, okay? Coming to the last one, would you ever dye your hair purple just for fun? Well, that's a good question. It is too informal and again too specific to be asked in the IELTS. The IELTS, even though allows you to use colloquial language, it's never going to cross that boundary and become too informal with you, or like we say in India, become too frank with you. All right. This is not a friend talking. At the end of the day, it is a formal setup. So the questions also have some sort of decorum that they need to maintain. So no, this is not an actual question from the IELTS. What have we learned from this? What we've learned is that in the part 1, you will have questions that start with do you, asking you about a general preference or something that you do. The topics will be very generic, something that applies to the entire world. They can also start with these potential question starters, but they'll never be too specific. That's what you need to keep in mind. There's always going to be possibility for many different kind of answers to come through in the part 1. Now let's move on to part 2. Pause. All right, let's see if you were able to spot the fake ones from the real ones in this lineup. Talk about a dream you had that changed your life. Now, a lot of part 2 cue card long-term questions do start with talk about or describe, right? Most of them will. I think 99.9% of the questions will start either with talk about or describe. Okay, now this, from the looks of it, seems like something you can talk about at length. So it seems like a good question, but it is fake. Again, part 2 will also be related to your life because you're expected to speak at length, which means for 1 to 2 minutes. But it's never going to be so vague, so oddly specific, a dream that changed your life. This question has an assumption in it that you have had a dream that changed your life. Now, that's not something that happens to everybody. You are not allowed to change your cue card after you get it. And if you get this question in your cue card or this prompt in your cue card, it's unlikely that you had a dream that changed your life. That doesn't happen to most people. So it has an assumption built into it, which won't happen in part 2 questions. Yes, there will be assumptions built in for very general things, like a person who inspired you. There's always somebody who inspires us in some way whatsoever, right? So again, here, you need to take into account that so many people from all over the world are taking this test, so you cannot make them too weirdly specific, which is what this question is. The second one is describe a time you helped someone. We're all good people. I think we've helped someone at some point in our lives. So yes, this is a legit question. Describe a place near water that you enjoy. Again, here it just says near water. It didn't say next to at a beach, ocean, lake, pond, river, right? So you've definitely been to at least one place with a water body there. And if you haven't, at least you're aware that places exist with a water body, beach being the most obvious, probable example. So even if you haven't been to a place near water that you've enjoyed, you can always say that, I haven't been to a place, but I would like to go to a beach. I live in Delhi. There are no water bodies around. All the water bodies around are polluted, so you can't really enjoy them. Okay, so you can take that tangent. So here again, the possibility of answering is always there for everybody around the world. So yes, this is an actual question. Coming to the last one, describe your favorite Instagram influencer. Again, this is crossing that formal boundary. Being an Instagram influencer is still not considered a formal profession. And so here, that's not something that will be asked in the IELTS. Maybe you can be asked to describe again, here you're working with the assumption that you have a favorite Instagram influencer. Maybe you are very you think negatively of influencers. So working with the assumption that you have a favorite is setting you up for failure. You can't really talk about anything here because you don't like Instagram influencers or you've never been on Instagram, you're against social media. Instead, questions like these should be focused on describe, let's say, a famous personality that you admire. Here, there is still scope for you to talk about a famous personality from any discipline, any field. If you're not into social media, if you're not into movies, not into music, you're still into something. And in that something, there are people who've reached heights that everybody admires. For example, if you're really into science, there are scientists that you can look up to and they can be the famous personality that you admire, right? So there has to be scope for everyone to answer, which is why this is a no-go, not a good question, a fake one. Now coming to part 3, which is the higher order thinking follow-up discussion, where you have to use your brain a bit more. So pause and tell me which one of these, which ones are real, which ones are fake. And here we are. Tricked you. All of them are fake. No, I'm kidding. I didn't trick you. Some of these are real. So first one, why do some people prefer to live in cities rather than in the countryside? Again, because this is part 3, where you have to really justify your points, give examples and explain your thought process. So a lot of them will start with why or how. Okay. So here, this definitely a legitimate question from the IELTS. Here you can get into the mind space of someone who prefers to live in cities, even if you're not that person. The higher order thinking that this question is trying to assess is whether you can think from other people's perspectives, which is always a good thing to be able to do. So definitely a real question. Second one, should people stop using smartphones completely? Again, here the word completely sort of gives it away. A question needs to be worded in a way that it doesn't take a stand. Okay, but this question, because of the word completely, is saying that, the just complete ban on smartphones is necessary for the benefit of the world. And questions will never have such strong stances and this strong tone, which is why I've told you in the past that you'll never find the superlative degree in any of these questions. The best, the worst, the least, the most. You won't find words like this in these questions. So here completely sort of gives it away. So this is not a real question. Should people stop using smartphones completely? Can be better worded as, what kind of impact do you think smartphones have on the development of children? Okay, and then the follow-up question after this could be, what are some things that you would suggest to counter this problem? Okay, so those are the kind of questions you will get, not questions that themselves have a bias built into them. Next, do you think it's okay to judge people by their fashion sense? Sounds like a question that's not judgmental, but if you pay close attention, it has that bias in it as well. So no, not a real question. First of all, it's saying it's okay to judge people by their fashion sense, implying that a lot of people do judge people by their fashion sense. So the question is working with that implication, right? And then it's saying that, do you think that can be okay? So it's asking you to justify a stance that is obviously wrong, okay? A better question that actually can show up in the IELTS test is, what kind of impact does fashion have on society? Then you can talk about how fashion has become sort of a status symbol, and you are able to tell if somebody belongs to the elite class just by looking at their fashion and choice of brands. So all of that can be discussed, but the question has to give you space to discuss that. This question is too restrictive. It constrains you. It's pointing you into one really specific direction, that do you think it's okay to judge people? And somehow it's also supporting that bias in a way by giving you the option of saying, yeah, it's okay to judge people. All right. So this is not the kind of question that you will see in the IELTS test. And finally, we have, what role does art play in society? Again, it has no built-in connotation. It's not saying it has a negative role or a positive role. It gives you space to discuss that and think about that. It's talking about art, which is a common topic in the IELTS speaking test. We've discussed common topics and I've given you topic-specific vocabulary in a different video, so you can go check that out if you're new to the channel. So yes, a topic that does show up in the IELTS, a question that's not restrictive, that gives you space to explore and answer. And again, it doesn't specify what role, and it doesn't specify what part of society. So it doesn't say, you know, economics or media or anything, right? It just says society. So that gives you the opportunity to narrow in whichever direction you're comfortable talking about. And again, role, it doesn't say in terms of, you know, like education or recreation. It doesn't specify these things. Again, you can talk about art in terms of education, art in terms of recreation, art in terms of politics. That could be something you talk about, right? So you have so many options because the question is purposely worded in a way to give you all these options. Okay, that's what makes it a possible IELTS question and wrong color, an actual IELTS question. Okay, so now I hope you've understood the difference, what makes a question and just open to possibilities so that people from all around the world can answer. And because you now know this, you will be able to understand how to potentially answer these questions and how you need to prepare. You don't have to prepare radical answers. You can have different stances, you can have different perspectives. You just need to have an opinion about some common topics, how they affect us, our life, society, etc. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow us on all our socials, and do check out the other videos on the channel if you're new, and consider subscribing if you found this helpful. I will see you again hopefully soon. Till then, take care and bye-bye.